home of Welsh sport. This is Cymru Sports. You're listening to Cardiff City World on Cymru Sports Radio, live from the Welsh capital. The most interactive football show in Wales, featuring guests, fan opinion, and all the latest news surrounding Cardiff City. Have your say and get in touch now. Of Welsh sport. This is
Good evening, Cardiff City fans and Welsh football fans around Wales. This is Si. We are Cardiff City World, live on Cymru Sport, your place for interactive football chat. We have special guests, fan opinion, debates, and much more. Hot off the transfer window, there's plenty to discuss. But with no further ado, let me bring in my first guest of the evening. He is former Cardiff City defender, former Celtic defender, and most definitely Cardiff City legend, Mr. Glenn Loovens. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
No, well, thank you for the time. I know you're a busy man and you're on the way to watch some more football.
Correct.
First and foremost, my friend, very much looking forward to having you down in Cardiff in April. I believe it's the first time you've been back for a while, isn't it? Yeah.
It's been a while, so I'm due a visit over. So why not combine it with to give something to the fans?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fantastic night. And as I was talking to you the other day about, it's not only is it an entertaining and fun night for the fans, of course, but it's also, I find that the guests really enjoy it as well. Get to relive, stories and moments from your career, but also interact with the fans and stuff like that.
Of course, it should be a good night. I'm already looking forward to it.
With your memories of Cardiff, obviously we don't want to give too much away this evening, but I did wonder if you could sort of explain to me what it was like to play in front of those Cardiff City fans.
No, it was great. I played still in the old Ninian Park, which was a great hostile crowd, and they always intimidated the opponent, so which was good for us. And I enjoyed every moment from it. And like I said, I came to Cardiff and started to play every week. Became not only a better player but a better person as well. So I only have good memories in Cardiff.
Excellent. And in your time at Cardiff City, which player do you think was the most gifted naturally to play with?
Well, we had some great young talent, of course, with Joe Ledley, Aaron Ramsey came through the ranks, which were two very talented boys. Also Stephen McPhail, I quite liked him. He was a natural gifted player with a great ability on the ball. But I probably have to say Aaron Ramsey, especially in the beginning of his career, he was an amazing player.
Yeah, I always hear from sort of some of the players that when he first came into the first team, 16 years old, it was almost a bit of a shock to some of the senior pros that someone so young could jump in and be so effective so young.
Yeah, no, I think I remember he was only 15 when he started training with us, and you could just see how easily he could turn away from you with this. When he had his back to you, he could turn right, left so easily, and you could see he was going to be a special player.
I always think, because obviously my son's 15 now, and he's playing against men at grassroots level at certain times, and he also sometimes he won't tell them how old he is, because he finds that if they know that he's only 15, they kind of hold off a little bit because they don't want to go in too hard. But obviously, in a professional environment, Aaron would have been put with you guys in the first team because he was viewed as good enough and on the way to being in that first team squad. What was it like for for grown adults, for athletes to play against someone so young?
Yeah, listen. In football, you have to earn things on the pitch, so there's no presents being given there. So he earned the right to be there, and you could see straight away from the first training that we could all understand why he was with us, it was soon enough that he would only start playing, and it started quite quickly, and rightly so. He was, like I said, he was natural gifted, but also a good guy. He was willing to learn, willing to listen, willing to work, and if you add that with quality and natural ability, you have a special player.
I'm also kind of interested, and someone's just put it in the comments actually. How would he have compared to lads of a similar age, in the Dutch system at that time?
Well, I for instance, I grew up at final with Van Persie. He was also, like a special talent, and special talent always come early and always rises to the top. And like I said, Aaron Ramsey surely did that, and like Van Persie, these are special players and with special ability. So if you put Aaron Ramsey in the Dutch school at his age, I'm pretty sure he would also be a quick riser in the Dutch football for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Ironically, they went on to play with each other at Arsenal, I believe, as well. A little bit. Let's move away from Aaron, because obviously we wanted to have a quick chat with you this evening. What's your favourite memory at Cardiff City?
I have quite a few, but if I have to call out one, it's the final, of course, FA Cup final. Not only the game, but the whole build-up. It was something special. Also the semi-final, played in a full Wembley. It was something special, and something that I will always always remember it's something that I will never forget. Although we kind of lost the final, which is never nice as a football player. But looking back now, it was a real achievement for everybody involved in Cardiff City. And also, I have to say the welcome received we got after we lost the final. It was it summed up. I think the Cardiff City fans, they were all there cheering for us, and that made us feel a little bit better. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think any Cardiff City fans, particularly sort of my age, and that, we never would have expected to ever be in an FA Cup final. So it was obviously a very special day, result aside. And I think, like you say, it was one of those things where, yes, the result didn't go our way, but I think the fans were very proud of the team. Is the FA Cup final day, because I grew up with the build-up, all through the morning, and it's kind of like almost like an all-day thing. Is that like that all across Europe as well, like a big day, the FA Cup final?
Yeah, of course. It's England in general. It's the biggest football country there is, and FA Cup is by natural the biggest cup there is to play for. And I do remember also back in Holland that we used to watch the cup finals as well. And experienced this as a player, the whole build-up. We made a song and all that. It was quite fun. Yeah.
Cool. So it looks like you've got your nice warm coat on, ready for the Welsh weather. But very much looking forward to having you down in April. Wow. See?
Yes. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best with the show. and I'm looking forward to see you all at our special evening together in April.
Absolutely, mate. Thank you so much for your time, Glenn, and I'll speak to you very soon. Take care, my friend.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Glenn Loovens, everybody. So obviously you can get your tickets for the event on 25th of April with Glenn Loovens at Splot Cons. It's going to be another phenomenal event. I'm very confident to say. We've done Darren Pearce, Michael Chopra, Willie Boland, Andy Campbell, of course, not forgetting most recently Joe Ledley. But of course, the most recent one and definitely the biggest to date was Craig Bellamy, just a couple of weeks after he got the Wales job. And it was such an exciting event. And it's been a real exciting time to build those events up. And it's a really intimate occasion. There's only 100 tickets or so. We keep them small. We keep the price small as well. So it's an absolute bargain, and it's a real, not a long night, but it's nicely paced. It's a sort of two parts to the evening. The first part, the guest will tell their stories, talk a little bit about their career. There's a short break, and then the second part, we open up the questions to the audience, where you get to ask the questions. And obviously, Glenn doesn't do a great deal of media, so that means that his stories have not been heard very much, and he's really looking forward to it. I know he had the opportunity to do a lot of other events, but he chose to do ours, which I'm very proud of, very excited to say. The tickets went pretty well over the weekend. There's a few left, but there's not a lot, so please do get your tickets. If you are watching on YouTube, all the details are in the social media underneath the description, and you can get your tickets. There's a couple of different options, but yeah, it's an absolute bargain. And I'm sure that anyone who's been to those events will testify just to how much fun they are, and just a great opportunity for fans to interact with their heroes. So we have another guest joining us in just a second, but before we get to that, I would like to know you guys, Cardiff fans. Got the FA Cup on Saturday, Stoke. What would you do with the team? Would you, fully rotate it? Would you mix it up a little bit? Or would you go with the strongest team as possible and try and get a bit of a cup run going? For me, the squad looks real deep at the moment. And with some players coming back from injury, with some players coming in January, not maybe as many outs as perhaps we thought. So the squad does look big. It looks like, week to week, there's going to be a couple of senior professionals sitting out from that matchday squad. So it'll be interesting what they do. I will give my opinion in just a minute. We'll get the fan view as well from Jamie Anderson in just a while. I've got Jack Ward coming on in just a second from the That Football League podcast, who's going to take us through the championship transfer window, who he thinks had a good window, who he thinks didn't. And we'll have a bit of a chat about that. You please do let us know on social media. You can contact us at CCFC World on Twitter, Cardiff City World, everywhere else. Obviously, please do tag Cymru Sport in that as well. And look, this most recent game for Cardiff against Leeds, result-wise, was an absolute disgrace. As JT has just said in the chat, it's unacceptable to lose 7-0 in anything, in any level of football. It's unacceptable to capitulate against that much against any team. And I think, look, was it an off day? Yes. Does it go against perhaps the performances we've seen most recently? Yeah, it probably does. But 7-0 is obviously not acceptable. We will come back to that. But now we're going to talk all about the championship transfer window. Who had a good window? Who didn't? And joining me to discuss that is Jack Ward from That Football League That Football League podcast. I'm delighted to say.
The home of Welsh sport. This is Cymru Sport.
Good evening, Jack. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Very good, mate. Very good. It's been an interesting transfer window. And look, from the Cardiff City point of view, I think it was decent. I thought the ins were relatively good. We addressed pretty much what we needed to, certainly the urgent ones. I probably would have liked to have seen maybe one or two out just because we look a bit bloated. But, that's obviously up to the manager to manage. But I wanted to get your opinion on kind of the ups and the downs of the transfer window in the Championship and who you thought has done well maybe and who not so well.
We'll start with the positives. I think that's always a nice place to start because I think a lot of teams have done pretty well. The general consensus is this was quite a busy January window, I think. There was a lot going on, and for a January that normally consists of quite a slow window, teams being quite pragmatic, teams not wanting to sell, and teams also asking for a lot of money for their players in the middle of the season. But actually, I think we almost went against that a little bit in the window. Generally, a lot of teams did a whole lot. There were teams that struggled, and we'll come on to that in a second. But the teams that did really well, the ones that stand out, I'll start with one that I think goes under the radar a little bit, potentially not, but I think Millwall had a fantastic window. They had a really, really quite cleverly strategic one, If you look at the notable out, they sold SA to Crystal Palace. But what you can only ask is that when you sell a player like that, you reinvest it into the squad, and you reinvest that money into the squad, and sort of almost allow yourself to bring in assets and almost look at the long term as well as the short term when you've got money to spend. It's not always easy to have money to spend either. When you sell a player for good money in the January window, other teams know you've got money, and that can sometimes make it quite difficult. But I think Millwall went around it really, really well. They strengthened the squad for the now. They strengthened in the long term as well. You look at the age profile of those signings, a lot of them permanent. The average age of their new signings are 21. So like I said, you're looking at the long term. You're bringing in assets for a player they sold for good money to the Premier League. They kept Tanganga too. They're really quite strong and crucial centre half. They won't get spoken about, I think, as much as Sheffield United, I think, also had just as good of a window because they're not a Sheffield United, and Millwall fans hopefully take that the right way. They're not going to be spoken about because they did bring in the glamorous names, essentially, that maybe a Burnley did with a Marcus Edwards deal. They went really, really quite cleverly around approaching this one. But yeah, really, really good. Fantastic. I think Millwall have struggled in previous windows before, and they always come out of the window sometimes feeling hard done by. They have a very specific model they haven't been able to execute in the last couple of years, but they've definitely gone to do that. I think the hierarchy have done a great job in doing so. In terms of the others, I think Sheffield United, like I mentioned, have to be up there. If you look at that Sheffield United squad that we saw going into the season, it was absolutely all over the shop. And what they've done is definitely improved it. And the biggest indication, if you look at it, one big criteria or one big objective or one big key, if you're looking to rank a window or put a name on a good window winner, for example, is that squad coming out significantly better than it entered that January with? And I think Sheffield United definitely did that. A really strong one for the Blades. Most areas of the pitch were strengthened with a really nice blend of experience, long-term additions as well. Again, I look at age profile and assets. How old was that Sheffield United squad when it got relegated? It needed a total rebuild. It took time. It took a new ownership to come in and provide those funds, and they've definitely done that. The makeup of the squad contractually, I think, has finally got some stability. If you remember what it looked like at the start of the season, there was players all over the shop when it comes to contracts, and players all over the shop when it comes to longer term prospects of that. So the back line needed work, heavily invested. Harry Clark and Rob Holding, for example, great piece of business. No key departures too as well. It was about keeping hold of your players as much as bringing new ones in. So yeah, those two stand out. I think Sunderland, Middlesbrough also have to be mentioned for extremely good ones. Stoke City as well went, I think, around it quite well, pragmatically and sensibly. And Stoke, sometimes that hasn't always been the case. They sort of come into this league and have done over the last couple of years and try to go about it in a weird way, and it's backfired miserably. But for the first time in a long time with Mark Robins in charge now, they've gone about it quite sensibly. And sometimes that's not the bad thing, not the worst thing to do, I don't think, in January is be sensible. So they're the good ones. There were some bad ones. Watford had an absolute shocker. Just really, really underwhelming. And that might be an understatement. I probably would say that's a real understatement. I think that it was a really, really bad one for them. The squad is so light in air, especially in the creative positions. They're lacking in numbers. And again, Watford have been let down by their owners. There's always this idea that the Watford owners like to hire and fire their managers really, really swiftly. And there's already a story recently about Tom Cleverley being already given the boot. However, they did not back him. They did not back him whatsoever. Injuries that squad were there before the window. They have not addressed that. It's never a great sign when you see fans online the day after the window looking at the free agent market, wondering if they could pick up 3 or 4 players from there. That's always a sign of a bad window. So again, question marks over the ownership. But if we had Bruty and Watford, I think have always had question marks over their ownership. Swansea, as much to the delight of the people listening to this, if you're a Cardiff fan, not a good window for Swansea City. Absolutely not. Sold their club captain and didn't really have a plan. Did not have a plan after that. And that is unforgivable. If you're a Swansea City fan and you're selling Matt Grimes, who's been so important for them over the last couple of years, to try and replace him with loan signings and players that just aren't proven to the level or aren't the same profile as Matt Grimes, and sold him for decent money too, and went about it really poorly. It's just like I said, unforgivable. That's the word I'd use to describe that. Serious gaps, a lazy window for Swansea. A lot of words from their owners, Coleman, before it started, about going about it in a strategic and sensible way with multiple almost windows of planning for this window. I'll be honest with you, I don't think his actions aligned with his words. And finally, the real negative that I'd have to bring forward is Derby County too. They had a really quite struggling window, I thought. The actual incomings on face value don't look too bad whatsoever. I didn't mind the actual additions if you're looking at it in isolation, but they needed to do so much more. Missed out on attacking signings. I think it's always very enhanced too when you're in a bad place on the pitch. You look at teams like Swansea in a horrible run. You have a bad window. I think those poor feelings are enhanced. Same with Watford, and I think similarly with Derby County. So I've given you 3 teams there that have done, I think, really well, and 3 teams there that I think have done really, really poorly.
Very quickly, Jack, who do you think has had the best window in those kind of relegation teams? Because I think, for me, I thought Plymouth did all right, and I think Hull have done all right. Cardiff, like I said, I think it was all right. Swansea look like they might get dragged in to that sort of relegation battle. And like you say, that negative knock-on effect of having a bad window on the back of having bad form is obviously, it's not ideal for morale. Is there anyone in that sort of, I don't know, say bottom sort of 6 or 7 who you feel had a better window than others?
I think Plymouth did, like you say. I think Plymouth went about it pretty well, and it's so easy for a side that are bottom of the table to sort of approach a January and go. And actually, because of how tight it is, I don't think anyone's adrift yet. I think everyone thought that Plymouth might be adrift, but after a couple of results now, it is so much tighter and crazy how it looks league table wise. But yeah, Plymouth went about it well. I think they spent good money. Did they replace the attacking loss of Morgan Whittaker? Perhaps not, but I think their objective was strengthen that back line because they were shipping goals in far too easily. And if you look at the defenders they brought in, they definitely have strength in that position. They look physically stronger, physically better in those backward positions. So they almost looked at one position and went quite heavy on that. And I think they did a good job of doing that. They've given themselves a chance. And Plymouth, I think, only just wanted that chance. Hull as well, like you say, they did really well. I think Hull have always got quite a bit of money to spend, to be honest. They always sort of feel you always feel like they've got that financial power in them to do it. And the signing of Louis Barry, I think, is a fantastic one. Matt Crooks has already made a real impact. They've got a nice blend of players there that have been there and done it at championship level, but also younger players that can hit the ground running too. Oxford have to give us a bit of shout out as well. I think we had a really good window. I think we were strong in doing that for the first time in a long time. We weren't at deadline day scratching our heads wondering if we we're going to get a late deal done. We felt quite relaxed and quite comfortable in doing so. And again, that's helped in the opposite effect. Like you mentioned there, Swansea, a good run for us, and suddenly everything looks far rosier off and on the pitch. So yeah, Plymouth have given themselves a chance. Hull have done well. And I think Oxford United have done pretty well as well. And hopefully we can move away from that bottom 3 conversation sooner rather than later.
Yeah, 2 last quick 2 questions really, Jack. With Oxford, what's your opinions of Mark Harris since he's moved to you from us?
Yeah, I do like Mark Harris. I think he's a very, very selfless player. And I think that's something that even Cardiff fans potentially would have actually given as a real positive of Mark Harris. And when he's actually represented the Welsh national team as well, I imagine there's a little bit of maybe plaudits to that side of his game too. He's a very, very selfless runner. He'll do a lot of work off the ball. He'll press and run for absolute days. I think he's finding maybe the goal scoring side of the championship slightly more difficult than League One, but that's a step up. And I think positions that you notice a step up the most is probably the striker. Strikers that can do it in League One, then strikers that can do it in the Championship. There's a real jump there. Midfielders and defenders can almost sort of bypass that slightly easier than strikers. You sort of notice that a little bit more. Has he ran less? Has he worked less hard? Absolutely not. Is his goal scoring output as good as it was in League One? Maybe not so much. But Mark Harris has always been that type of player that if he scores 1 or 2, he normally goes on a pretty good run. That's what happened in League One. He had a pretty rubbish run for around 10, 15 games and then ended the season fantastically well and played a massive part in us getting promoted to the Championship. So, yeah, a really selfless player. He's done well for Oxford on the whole. He's a bit of a fan favourite in that sense. A few more goals in the Championship lift that confidence. And, yeah, I think he's still well and truly part of those first team plans and still well and truly a key member of the squad, I think.
Yeah, I think he started the season quite well, didn't he? He scored a couple of goals early on in the Championship. Obviously, you guys have really pulled away a little bit from that bottom 3, although, you know, it's very easy to get dragged back in. A couple of results in this league and you're straight back in it. And finally, was there any other players that Cardiff signed in January that caught your eye?
You know what? I think as one that I do like is Alves from Leicester. I think that could be a really good one. I think first loans are always quite dangerous. I think they're always a little bit iffy. You don't quite know what they're going to look like. I think sometimes they can almost be, and there will be exceptions, but I feel a lot of the time with first loans, they either hit the ground running straight away and you go, wow, how have we got this guy? Sometimes they just don't look on it and do look maybe out of their depth. And the Championship's quite a brutal first place to sort of experience your loan. But if you look, listen to the fans of Leicester City, and you listen to the fans of that have seen him more than I think everybody else has. He's clearly a very technically gifted player, a really exciting player. He's done well in Premier League 2. He's done well in the non-professional side of his game. It's now the massive step up that he needs to make. So I don't mind the sort of signs. They're quite exciting. They're quite intriguing. You can't really judge him at all, and it's difficult to judge any player in any transfer window until they start kicking a football around. But I think in terms of someone that could be an exciting one and one to keep a lookout for, it could be him, because we don't know too much about him, but he's got a good pedigree from Leicester, I think.
Excellent. And Rhys in the chat just asked, if Oxford do stay up this year, would you be, as a fan, looking to strengthen that position over Mark Harris, or do you think he's one that'll get better with age?
It's a really good question. It's $1 million question, right? If you're looking at if we stay up and positions to strengthen next season. It comes down as well to what Oxford United want to be in the Championship. Okay, it is almost as simple as that. It's a case of where we want to get to and what we want to be. I think for the next couple of years, we want to sort of be a stable Championship team, one that is just pottering around, causing problems, but also not getting ahead of ourselves, not getting dragged into things, and sort of being sustainable and just being okay at this level, which is a great position for Oxford United, the club size and where we've been over the last couple of years and quite a few years before that. So I think we probably will bring a striker in. I don't think there's many windows where a team doesn't want to bring in a striker in the summer or January. I think everybody wants to bring in a striker, whether they've got the best striker or not. So I imagine we probably will. It's him and Bradshaw for Oxford United until the end of the season, I think. And then we maybe look at maybe a more proven or a different profile striker. But they're the ones that cost a big buck. Strikers are the ones that cost so much money. And you're going to have to find a really good one from the lower leagues, or you've got to go and spend big from somewhere else. So I think Mark Harris will definitely be one that keep around for a long time. He's not one that if we stay up, we get rid of him. I don't think that. I think he offers a lot more than just goals, which is crucial, I think, for how we play and where we want to be and how we approach games of the Championship, considering we're Oxford United.
Absolutely, mate. Thank you very much for joining me, Jack. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, so the best place to find me is the Jack Ward Football Podcast on YouTube. So all Championship stuff there. So I think it's quite a good. This has been quite a good segment because I've just done a video where I've ranked every single Championship club's transfer window. So a lot of my notes and a lot of that has come from that video. So yeah, all Championship stuff, football games I've analysed and broken down. We do a lot of work on that and some cool other concepts as well. So yeah, on YouTube, Jack Ward Football Podcast. That's the place to be.
Amazing. Thanks, Jack. Thank you for your time, mate.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Jack Ward there. And I appreciate Jack's time. That was really interesting to hear, a fan from a different Championship team and kind of ranking the transfer window from other clubs. It'll be really interesting to hear a Cardiff City fan's view. That's next.
You're listening to Cardiff City World on Cymru Sport Radio, live from the Welsh capital. The most interactive football show in Wales, featuring guests, fan opinion, and all the latest news surrounding Cardiff City. Have your say and get in touch now.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be joined by Cardiff City fan, home and away, with his family. Jamie Anderson, how are you, mate?
Good, thanks, Simon. How are you doing, mate?
Really good, mate. Really good. I'm absolutely freezing. I feel like I'm like shivering. So hopefully that's not coming across on a microphone, but I'm really cold. But anyway, that's a side note. So yeah, we got a nice bit of time now, mate, to get that fan opinion. First of all, let's talk about Saturday. You went up there with with a good few fans. It's not the shortest of trips. It's not the most pleasant of drives at some points. Obviously it's disappointing to lose anyway, but to lose in that fashion, it is upsetting, isn't it, that to see us capitulate in that manner.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, the words people can say are embarrassing, and you probably are to an extent to the whole footballing world. Is it gutting? Most probably. But for me, the most thing is, we've always said is any club, what you want to see is pride and effort as the fundamentals. Pride most definitely would have been hurting after that game for fans and for players alike. But the effort just didn't seem like it was entirely there. Yes, that doesn't help, and you concede early goals. It never does help. But a place like Ellen Road, with the form they're in, etc., you really have to sort of build blocks. You need to take it in, in the first 10, 15 minutes, quiet the crowd, etc. And we didn't seem like we were at it. Too many players were shirking out of challenges, and, we're second best the balls. And again, you could have a look at a number of factors. Yes, Leeds are a brilliant, brilliant side. They are where they are because of that. Yes, they've got brilliant players from Premier League, etc. But that doesn't stop you not winning headers. That doesn't stop you necessarily not winning the 50-50s when your opponent's next to you. And a lot of people said, is it because Omer wasn't on the sideline? Quite possibly. That may have had a factor. But 7-0 again, if you're a neutral fan looking at that, you kind of laughing at us for that. And yeah, what will be is done now, I suppose. We've just got to move on.
Yeah, it was a bit disappointing to say the least. But I mean, what I found strange is, obviously I agree with what you said. Like, you try and build and you try and quieten the crowd and stuff like that. Didn't really understand what we were trying to do tactically. Like, we played a very high line against probably the quickest front three in the league. And we played Callum O'Dowd at left back, who'd been out injured. And I'm not blaming any individuals. I'm just saying, for this game, straight back from a hamstring injury, he's already like a winger playing at left back, playing a high line. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, and we didn't seem to make those tactical adjustments to drop a bit deeper and things like this until we were 3-0 down. And that is disappointing for me because, yes, I think since that Oxford game on Boxing Day, I think the effort and the determination and the application, the pride in the shirt has been there. And I've been quite impressed with Omar Rhys in a lot of different aspects, particularly how adaptable he is tactically. But I was disappointed by that side of things on Saturday because I felt it was quite predictable what Leeds were going to try and do. You've got Daniel James on one side and you've got Arneson in the 10 and what they're going to try and do. And we didn't seem to be ready for that. And I think that's unforgivable. But most unforgivable is to, like you say, shirk out of challenges and not do the fundamentals, not do the basics. And we didn't. And it kind of just got progressively worse. And look, once you're 3-4 down, your job as a professional is to make sure it doesn't get any worse and it doesn't become humiliating. You have to shut up shop. And I know that's not what, fans dream of, the comeback from 4-0 down, 3-0 down. But ultimately, first and foremost, you make sure it doesn't get to 5, 6, 7. And we just didn't do that, mate, did we?
No, and I mean, again, to be fair, Cardiff fans are fantastic. They travelled in their numbers. They were backing the team even when it was 4-5-0. It's never easy, and again, I think emotionally during the game, you feel annoyed more than anything. You feel embarrassed, etc. All the negative, descriptions you could say. And I think again, it's very hard for football fans to do. And, I, for one, will say it myself. I'll have an opinion, or I'll say something during a game and I'll think, was I a bit too harsh, etc. But in the end, I just thought, you know what? The better side, the way I have to put it down, is the superior side won. They're by far the better side, hence the league positions. And we have to now move on from it, as much as that is hard. And against one of our rivals in the league, and, with all the history we've had against them, it's gone. My only worry from that more than anything was in a relegation battle like we are, that added goal difference now that's been subtracted, it almost feels like an extra point lost as such, because you'd never know how much those extra goals could be a valiant thing now, especially with the likes of Portsmouth and so on and so forth, who may have a bit more of a bit of a hope now, because we've been hit for 7. But again, that's gone. We've got a massive month coming up, and we've got to forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, Cardiff's season is not going to be decided and based upon playing against Leeds. It's going to be the teams around us. It's going to be potentially the FA Cup run. You might get a little bit of benefit from that, but it's the teams around us that we have to get points from. And look, it's one of them, isn't it? Before the game, I think a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's a bit of a free weekend," but there's having a game which you've got a bit of pressure off you, but then there's also, going the other way and losing in that manner. So I think that's important that we move on quickly. It'll be interesting now. We got Stoke in the FA Cup on the weekend, mate. And I'm a big proponent now of rotating and giving some of these young players a go. But also, I think a little run in the cup, when you're playing a team in your league, I think you kind of have to go for it as well, because that's a chance to get to the next round. You might get a big tie, you might not, but you can have that run, and winning becomes a habit. So we have to start a winning run again. Where would you be with the side? Because for me, I think obviously you've got the new players, but also I feel like there's players who've been sat on the bench for the last few games who've not played a great deal of football, who must be chomping at the bit, and they weren't really involved on Saturday, so they probably deserve an opportunity, because we did lose 7-0, and I think that has to come into consideration when selecting the team. And we can call it a rotation, but maybe dropping players isn't the worst thing either. Where do you stand on that 11?
The first and foremost is, for me, it's got to be a competitive side. We went up to Sheffield Wednesday and we all said third round, you know what, nap it, if we go out, we go out. But that was probably one of our better performances this year with a very mixed side. I'd like to see the new guys starting, if I'm honest, because there's no better way to integrate them into what is the Championship than playing probably in a cold, wet Stoke, the whole narrative. I'd like to see them get minutes. I think Salah is kind of slowly building himself up. Let's see what he can offer in what will probably be a physical game. So, it'd be nice to see that side of him. But again, like you said, you don't want to go there and get another loss, because another loss, losing could be as infectious as winning games. You don't want to sort of start losing games again, do you? Whether it's league or cup wins. I think there's a good number of Cardiff fans following as well on the weekend, which is great to hear as well, because despite the performances, credit to the fans, they're travelling, they're getting behind the team. But yeah, I mean, there's been a rotation. I like the likes of Louis Giles, again, maybe that's me being a needy boy, and liking thing. But I think these sort of players, if they can come in and show some energy, I'm all for it. Let's see what Louis Giles can offer. Because like we said, no disrespect to O'Dowda. If maybe we're being defensively found out at left back, well, let's give Louis Giles a chance. Let's see what he can offer and see if going forward, he is someone who's going to play himself into Omar's thoughts as, somebody who can be defensively sound. Maybe NG at right back, bring him in. Let's see what he can do now, because obviously Rinomota seems to have locked that right back sort of spot up. And again, it's a cup run. When you're in the cup, make the most of it as you can. Like you said, who knows? Everyone clambers for a great cup draw, and there's nothing better than that feeling of probably getting into the hat in the next round, hoping, like we always hope for a good draw. But unfortunately, we just got Stoke. No disrespect to Stoke.
But you know what, though, right? Is I also I quite like quietly getting a lower league team or a championship team, and just sort of going through the rounds without too much energy and too much hassle. And then suddenly you can find yourself in the latter rounds. And I think there is something to be said for that. Everyone loves a big draw, of course. That's part of what the FA Cup is. But we had a couple of people sent in what they would like to see. So Gareth Gardner said he'd like to see Howworth in goal, NG, Darland, Fish, Bagan as the back four, with Manswerk, Ramsey as a 2, and then Tanner, Robertson, Alves, and Salic. Obviously, going with the kind of the new signings, getting Ramsey back in there. Martin, who does some stuff for Cardiff City World, is all about the development sides. Obviously, you know Martin well as well. He said he'd like to see Howworth, Conte at right back, Fish, Darland, and Louis Giles. Manswerk, Ramsey if fit, Colwell in the 10, Tanner, Salic, and Alves. And I think that what Martin says there is kind of what I would like to see. I wouldn't gamble Ramsey.
No.
I just think it's not worth it. I think I'd like to see him play a couple more halves for the 21s. Have him on the bench, maybe, but I don't even think you need to rush that. We have options. I think my side off the top of my head would be, I think I would go with NG at right back because I think he needs some minutes. And we obviously want him to find his best form because at his best, he is one of the better right backs in the championship. As much as I'd like to see Conte, I'd probably go with NG. I would like to see Louis Giles get a start. I would definitely start Will Fish. I'm not entirely sure which partner I'd go for. I think Darland has been a bit up and down. Like when he's good, he's very good. And then physically, I think he's struggled a little bit. And then you have a decision to make with him. Do you play him against Stoke because you know it's going to be physical and he needs to get better at that? Or do you say, no, let's put Gutas in there for the physicality, Fish in there for an opportunity? So that's a bit of a different one. I would like to see Manswerk and Robertson play as a 2. And then I'd like to see Ruben in the 10 because I think Ramsey aside, I think at their absolute best, those 3 are probably our most gifted midfielders. So I'd quite like to see that combination. But I also understand the argument that, Stoke might be quite physical. So do you need a Chambers in there or a Rawls? I'm not sure. I'd like to see Manswerk with Robertson and Colwell because they're all young, all exciting, all technically very, very good. And then again, I'd like to see Tanner, Alves, probably Salic. I'd like to see Rocco Simic get a bench at least. I thought his finish in the 21s the other day off Ramsey's pass, incidentally, was excellent. But what have you made of Raheem Conte, mate, since he's come back? Have you seen much of him?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a few outings, isn't he, for the 21 to 23, is how you want to call it. I feel for him in a way because obviously throughout the summer everyone was thinking, what's he going to do with his next step? He shone towards the back end of the season last year, showed his versatility, showed moments of promise as well. Unfortunately, he went up to Woking and it didn't probably pan out as much as he'd like it and has come back. And obviously, because I believe the loan agreements and so on, the sort of registrations, he can't now be loaned out. So it's one of those ones where he's a nice body to, I suppose, have, because we've seen glimpses of it last year and you know what he can offer. But, again, where that equation, you've probably got to push, an inform and a motor out that equation. And if you look at it more centrally, I suppose, as such, if you were to put him in the centre of the park or more in more an advanced role, you've got the new players that he could possibly be, taking their minutes. And I think someone has said the other day, we've probably got now with the transfer window shut, like you mentioned early on in the show, we've got a bit of a bloated squad. So what you don't want to do is when players do need minutes who are going to be in and around that sort of match day squad, is taking minutes away from them when they probably need to build up their minutes. Like you said, Ruben Colwell there. I think for me, I'd love nothing more than Ruben Colwell to show the Ruben Colwell of what we've seen and we know. But obviously he's going through a patch at the minute where his confidence is probably at a low. So we all want to see him get as many minutes as we can. And again, I think up Stoke, we to see a Salak getting deliveries from an Ollie Tanner out wide and seeing if he can get that big head of, of his onto the ball and so on. Conte is someone I'd keep around and just say, keep playing minutes in the 21s. And should there an injury come up in the 20 in the first team squad. Definitely consider him for that backup right back spot, I think.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about Raheem Conte is his versatility, but most of all, I like his composure. He's so composed on the ball that it gives you confidence that he looks after it and stuff like that. With Ruben, it's interesting because I feel like if Ruben creates similar chances to what he did for Atete in the last round, you feel like Salic will probably take those chances, or Callum Robertson would probably take those chances. And then maybe Ruben's got a lot more confidence, in recent weeks because he would have got a couple of assists. I thought he played really well in that game. And he was probably unlucky to not start the following game in the league off the back of that performance. And it's interesting because, all football fans these days in the social media era, there's always got to be someone to blame. There's always got to be someone's fault, when really it's a collective thing. And of course, you're going to talk about individual performances. I personally don't feel that Ruben has been as bad as some people kind of make out on social media. Like, I see a lot of negativity towards him, like he's the problem. But actually, when you look at when he's played, a lot of the time he plays with different players in front of him who aren't creating this. I can't remember the last time he played with Tanner, for instance, where he's got someone running in behind, which obviously is good for him because it creates space, but it also gives him options to pass to. And that's one of the reasons I'd really like to see him with Mansberg and Robertson, because that feels like two players who can get the ball to him. And also, if you've got Salic in front of him, that's someone who looks like he could be a bit of a goal poacher. And then the pace on the wing. And as Jack has just said on the show, Alves looks like a really promising young talent, but being one of his first loans, you never quite know how that's going to turn out, do you? You don't know how he's going to deal with it.
No, and the good thing about Alves is he's coming from a really good club in Leicester, albeit yes, they're having their own troubles. You're not in a Leicester City academy and in and around the first team if you're not a good player. He's come back from a big injury. You can all look at it on YouTube with the challenge that Wolves player did on him, and it was a horrific challenge. And it's like, he's got a little 10-minute episode where he talks about his comeback. So he's got the attitude. He's got the work. The work ethic. So I think that's a big thing, especially when you're looking at development as Leicester are. It's not just about physically, it's about the mental aspect. And I think we need strong mental players in this battle that we're in currently. Yes, we've been on a great run, but what we don't want to have is a level of complacency. Anyone thinking that they're better than anyone else because they've come in from Leicester. We all need players that are willing to fight. And I think from looking at Alves and listening to his interview, I think he believes in himself. He backs himself. And like you said, with Ruben there, we've got a few players there who I think we've got flair, but we haven't got pace like, say, Leeds have. So we don't necessarily see those balls that you could play in behind like Leeds were doing to us to make it, make that sort of that flourish. But I think, again, listen, the cup run is, if people want to call it a free hit, etc., that's fine. But what we need to look at is the big picture here and go, get these people training together, get them working each other. And again, we've got a massive month coming up. And hopefully we'll start seeing ourselves climbing up the league as opposed to looking over our shoulder.
Indeed, mate. We'll talk about that month coming up in just a second.
You're listening to Cymru Sport.
So yeah, as you mentioned, there's a big month coming up, and I've seen some people saying, we should go with our best 11 on Saturday because we haven't got a game for a week. But actually we do. We have a game, a couple of days later in the league versus Portsmouth, which is, again, a bit of a trek. So we have to bear that in mind. It's going to be really interesting to see how Omar Rhys and co manage the squad. I think they're going to have to find that balance for the Stoke game. I do hope to see Louis Giles, I've got to say, because I feel like he's someone who, if they can give him a bit of an opportunity at left back, he'll do what Joel Bagan's done. And I think Joel Bagan has been really unlucky to not really just be the starting left back. It's just that Callum O'Dowd has had a very good season when he's been, obviously had these injury problems most recently. When you look at what's coming up, mate, like, what's your sort of thoughts on it? Obviously, we've got Portsmouth away Tuesday. followed by Bristol City at home, and then Plymouth away. 3 massive games.
They're huge. And I said to my mate the other day, I think maybe it's me being greedy, maybe it's being wishful, but I think we should be looking for a minimum of 6 to 7 points at least. Most probably because they are sides, especially in Plymouth and Portsmouth, that are in and around us. We've got the 7-side derby, which, as we know, is a game in itself, but with the position that we're in, it becomes even bigger. And again, we've seen from from when we beat Swansea, the effect it can have on the players, but also the effect it can have on the club in general when in a derby game is massive. And that's all positive momentum. So what we want to do is, massive game away at Fratton Park Tuesday night. We know that's huge, and that's probably the only thing that's keeping Portsmouth in this sort of fight as such. That's not going to be easy. You're going to need a different type of player there, probably, than what you're going to need against Bristol City at home on Saturday. So I think, again, like you said, you've kind of got to have that in your thoughts as well, that you're not going to be able to probably play the same type of football at Fratton Park than you would be able to on the Saturday. So I think my overall maybe optimism is at least 6 or 7 points out of 9. And I think that's most importantly because they're teams that are in and around us, especially with Plymouth and Portsmouth especially.
Yes, it's going to be fascinating, mate. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, just a little bit, as I like to do. From the 11 that played on Saturday, who would you drop for the next league game? At the moment, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the cup and who's going to impress. But who springs to mind immediately where you're like, maybe didn't quite do enough, or for whatever reason?
You could call this probably a cop out as such, but maybe Joe Rowles is probably the name, and I don't like saying that because of the servant he is and the great person he is. But you've got to see Mansfield come in at some point. And again, that's probably the natural replacement, isn't it? Is like we saw with Siopis, it was Rowles in, they were alternating that role. Would I like to see a change at the top of the pitch? One thing, if Ollie Tanner's fit, I think Ollie Tanner probably has to start on one of the sides. Part of me is a bit worried with the O'Dowda situation. I know it is a debatable point with fans that at times his defensive lapses have cost us goals, but then it's that sort of 50-50, isn't it? Is defensively at times it's not a lack of effort, it's not a lack of determination or anything like that, but he's not a left back and he's been put in that position on numerous occasions. So naturally you're going to have lapses of concentration, but going forward he's phenomenal. He's really, really good, and you get that outlet. So do I like to see Bagan maybe in there because I think of the defensive nous? Yeah, possibly. So I'd probably say if you're going to change anything, maybe the left back and possibly that sort of number 6 role, I would say that may need changing. It sounds daft considering that, we lost 7-0 at Leeds. But again, like I said earlier on, I think we've just got to brush that game off as a sort of an independent game. That probably won't happen again, and touch wood, it doesn't happen again. And think what has worked for us in the previous 8 games.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, look, I put you on the spot a little bit there, and I don't want to finish on a negative. So I wanted to ask you a little bit, what did you make of Mansfields' debut? It was only a little bit of a cameo, but did you see anything you liked there?
I think he likes to get a foot in. I think he genuinely does care because you could see him at the end of full time. He was one of the first ones who you could see showed his frustration. But again, I think it's such a little sort of time where the components that we can see that he's got to offer, the technical ability and so on, we didn't really see that because the type of game, the ball was just coming back. It was like a tennis match, it was literally, we clear it, they'd be straight back at us. So we didn't see a lot of it. But what I'm hoping to see with him is again, what we've seen snippets of, and what we're hoping to see is this calm, this composure, this fight that we can see that he's got. And again, hopefully that calmness will kind of instill and be infectious to everyone around them, because I think at times when we're in possession of the ball, we can be quite rushed and we can be quite panicked, which obviously then hinders your sort of which option of the pass you play or don't play. So So I'm hoping, again, he's not been at Ajax, for very long, but there was a reason why Ajax had signed him. And that's not because they've watched a YouTube clip, for example, like, certain fans have. They've obviously done some homework on him. So this loan move that we know it is at the minute, it'll benefit him. It'll benefit, hopefully, us, because who knows what can happen. But yeah, let's hope he's going to be a sort of a superstar for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think ultimately one thing you can almost guarantee is that if Ajax signed him, he's going to be technically good. It's whether he can adapt to the Championship, whether he's got the physical side of it and the bite, which he looked like he enjoyed that part of the game. So that's a good sign. But like you say, it was very difficult to judge in a small sample size. I'm hoping that he starts, I've got to be honest, on Saturday. Even if he only plays half, I would like to see him get that start. What are you most looking forward to over the next week, mate?
I think it's just the game. I think it's brilliant having a busy week. As we've probably seen when we've been drummed last Saturday, having too long to think about games can often sort of make you overthink. I think the best way to sort of get over a defeat like that is to get straight back into another game, because you can overthink things. So again, I did say after Saturday, it's a shame that this Saturday's game isn't a league game, because then we could sort of get those points on the board. But it's another chance for us to reset, get on the pitch and get some good football flowing, and hopefully another positive result.
Absolutely, mate. Give me a prediction for Stoke City in the FA Cup.
2-1 away win.
Go on, the boys. And who's going to score? Go on. Let's go all the way.
Let's go. I hope Salah. I just want to see, another moment like we had in Millwall that night. And I'm going to say a set piece from, let's say, Darland header. Why not?
Yeah, he's had a difficult time. I really like him, I do, but I understand why people have been a little bit critical of him. But I think the good has outweighed the bad. You have to allow players to settle into a different league in a different country and these things. It's clear that he's quite a big lad. I think it's just getting used to the referees allowing as much physicality. You don't get that in a lot of the European leagues. It'll be a free kick, it'll be this, it'll be that. And I think sometimes defenders particularly have to adapt to the fact that they're not just going to get a free kick every time they get pushed over or shoved or whatever.
And I think it works, like you said, he's still getting used to the league. I mean, he's been on the receiving end of, I think, some dubious decisions. I mean, he's been getting pushed, kicked, etc. All the dark arts of the Championship. However, I think he's got and he probably is slowly learning that. But when he is giving it at times, he's not as sort of cute as, say, the strikers are. So you've kind of got to remember, like, these officials, let's be brutally honest, they don't give us a lot as it is. It's Cardiff City, we don't get a lot. But you've kind of got to know when to pick your battles with an official. You can't be running 20 yards and ask him for a free kick, because as soon as he sees you kind of moaning, he's not going to give you anything, is he? Let's be honest.
No, that's it. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me, mate. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see you again soon. And have safe trip up to Stoke, my friend. And I'll speak to you soon.
No worries. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Jamie Anderson with the fan view there for Cardiff City fans. And that rounds up the Cardiff City hour nicely. But stay tuned, because we move into the Welsh Football Hour, where we discuss all things Welsh football, from grassroots right up to the national team. And we've got a special guest this evening as we take a deep dive into the Welsh Cup and the EFL clubs and the whole situation around that. So join us in just a second.
If you're hearing this, so are your potential customers. Be heard and reach sports fans across the country. We have advertising opportunities available throughout our programmes, website and commentaries. Working with you, we will create a bespoke package and make sure your message reaches the people you want to hear it. Contact us today to find out how Cymru Sport could help your business. Email contact@cymrusport.cymru.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Welsh Football Hour live on Cymru Sport and Cardiff City World, where we discuss anything from the national team to the JD Cymru Premier, the EFL clubs within the English pyramid, as well as grassroots football. We like to discuss it all. So if you have a view or you have a subject that you'd like us to discuss on this show, then please do get in touch, and we will most definitely do it. But I am delighted to be joined this evening by none other than journalist and author, Mr. Paul Abbandonato. How are you, Paul?
I'm very well, thank you. Enjoyed that. I caught some of the tail end of the last hour. It was very interesting, listening to different people's opinions.
Yeah, I did. Funny enough, I did think of you when a couple of those opinions came up. But it's always interesting, mate. It's all opinions, isn't it? And I think ultimately, what happened on Saturday for Cardiff was not good in any way, and I think that can go from a whole different setup, whether it's the setup, the attitude, or just the pure capitulation of it. They have to move past it, and they have to move past it quickly.
They do.
So, Paul, the reason that we got you on this evening is a little bit of a change to not talk purely about Cardiff City. We wanted to take a bit of a deep dive into the Welsh Cup, EFL clubs, JD Cymru clubs, all a bit of a situation, shall we say? And what I wanted to do was take a real deep dive into kind of how it started, what it was about, how different people felt, and where it is as we stand today, because it seems like it's dead in the water. But for anyone who doesn't know, kind of explain to us where it began, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think we have to go right to the beginning here, Simon. And when the big clubs in Wales were kicked out of the Welsh Cup, which was in 1996, which was, in my eyes, a very, very controversial move that the FAW took. I remember castigating them in an article for the newspaper at the time, and basically saying they demeaned a great competition, in my opinion. And clearly, I got a lot of flack from that, from certain people on the FAW and people involved with the Welsh clubs, if you like, who were still in the competition. But the fact is that it lost sponsorship, it lost its big clubs, so it lost its attendances, it lost its appeal, and it just wasn't the same in my eyes. Now, I remember that year, Barry played Canton Fried, now TNS, in the final, the first final without Cardiff, Swansea, Wrexham and Newport in the competition, and Merthyr, and there was something like 2,000 people in a 60,000-seater stadium, which wasn't a good look. I remember Bobby Gould, who did an awful lot of, quite rightly, got a lot of criticism for his time as Wales manager, but at least he tried to drum up interest. I remember him trying to get Princess Diana to come and present the cup, which would at least have, brought some publicity to it, if you like, and everything. So that's, they were kicked out of the competition, and certainly as far as the Welsh clubs in the English system are concerned, they feel that an historic right to enter Europe had disappeared. Yeah, but football has changed. We're almost 3 full decades on now. It's very different. There's a very different narrative out there, if you like. The fixture list is heavily congested. There's lots of other games, and to be fair, I was taken into the FAW's confidence on this plan a while back, and they gave me chapter and verse on why they were proceeding with it, which I'll probably come on to, if you like. Well, we'll certainly, one of the chief concerns of theirs is to try to gain a greater profile, projection, publicity, kudos to the Cymru Premier League, if you like, yeah, which, if we're being brutally honest, has never resonated with the public at large in Wales. And there's a feeling from Noel Mooney, and it's to be commended, in my opinion, that if he got the bigger clubs, if you like, involved in a League Cup competition with Europe at stake, it would naturally gain a much greater profile because of who's involved and the fan bases that those clubs have got, it would naturally gain a much greater profile for the Cymru Premier clubs who were up against them, if you like. And there would have been some great battles, TNS versus Wrexham, or Swansea versus, whoever, that sort of thing. Cardiff versus Barry. There can have been some super little games here. So the feeling was that they're our clubs, as far as the FAW are concerned. They're Welsh clubs, they're our academies, and we want to help them in any way we can. But at the same time, obviously, they're heavily promoting their own league, if you like. My concern with it, and I could get all of that reasoning, Simon, and I can tell you as a journalist, it would naturally lead to greater interest, if you like, because these are the bigger supported clubs, and so the media outlets would give it greater publicity. My concern with it, though, from the outset was that football has changed, and although the FAW were getting a written guarantee from the English FA that this would not affect the status of Cardiff, Swansea, Wrexham, and Newport to play in the Championship / Premier League, League One, League Two, i.e. the English system.
Mm-hmm.
My concern was, well, hang on a minute, I can see English clubs kicking up a fuss about this. They're going to think, hang on, if you want your cake and to eat it, this is not right. If you want that, go and play in the Welsh system. And written guarantee or not, what's to stop and I'm going to pluck any name out of the air here, what's to stop a Queen's Park Rangers or a Mansfield Town or a Peterborough United? What's to stop them from looking at this a few years down the line, 10 years, whatever, thinking, hang on, this is not right. If the Welsh clubs want this, well, go and play in the Welsh system. So I was uncomfortable with the hornet's nest that I felt was being uncovered here, if you like, 30 years on, because football has changed. And whereas a lot of this was driven by Andy Coleman, who's the Swansea chief, and Wrexham with their American owners. Yeah, with respect to them, they wouldn't know. I'm not going to say they're ignorant of the background of this, but they wouldn't be aware of the history of all this, if you like. But I was rather surprised that Steve Borley at Cardiff City and Hugh Jenkins, who's Newport's chairman, who do understand this, I was rather surprised that they signed up to it. Now, the argument from Steve is that, I've seen him say this on Twitter, is that we're only fighting for our historic rights, which goes back to what I was saying about when Welsh clubs used to qualify for Europe via the Welsh Cup. But I just felt there was a bit of a hornet's nest being stirred up, and I have spoken to senior figures at the Football Association in London, i.e. the English FA, and they have told me quite categorically that their club functions. And that's why, after what seemed a smooth passage for quite a while, it fell at that hurdle last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, when there was a meeting. One of their concerns was that playing in Europe would give the Welsh clubs an unfair competitive advantage, because they would be able to bring in better teams, bring in better players, bring in better sponsorship deals, all that sort of thing that goes with being a more successful outfit, if you like. I know that the FAW and the Welsh clubs had worked out, or were trying to work out a way where that money would be ring fenced. It wouldn't be part of the profit and sustainability financial reasoning and so on. But I mean, how do you quantify, if you get 5 players in and they come in because you're playing in Europe, how do you quantify those on a balance sheet, for example? So I thought it was a commendable idea from Noel Mooney to really boost Welsh domestic football. But I thought it was, good for Cardiff, Swansea, Wrexham, and Newport to explore the idea in great detail. But I can't pretend that I wasn't comfortable that the future standing of those clubs in the English system wouldn't have been under threat by this at some point, with some English clubs kicking up a fuss. And I also wasn't comfortable, to be honest with Simon, with the fixture list congestion. There's few enough Saturday 3 p.m. home matches as it is these days. So playing in Europe on a Thursday then would have caused another backlog because they couldn't have played again until the Sunday, realistically. And So that would have caused a sort of knock-on effect, which again the English clubs wouldn't have been happy with. So that's sort of a brief stroke long and short summary of it, if you like. Where we are at now, I'm not sure it is totally dead in the water, because this was very much Noel Burnley's baby, the FAW chief executive, and I think he'd like to explore ways of reviving it if possible. Whether that's practical or not, only time will tell.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was surprised, Paul, how public it became before the FA made their decision. But I don't know whether that was almost, maybe the cynic in me, I guess, that it was by design to put that bit of pressure maybe onto the Welsh FA the English FA to help the decision along. It was fascinating though, because there was definitely a mix of fan opinions. And I actually saw, it was strange, on social media, I actually saw a lot of the JD Cymru team's fans. They seemed to be quite on board with it. It was more the EFL club fans, Cardiff, Wrexham, Newport, Swansea. It was them who were a bit more against it. Just, not by any means an exact science, but just in terms of a general poll or general thing through my feed on social media. Like, what was your general feeling from the fans? Like, people contacting you on social media, were people for or against it?
Well, and people that I spoke to directly, a mix, as you say, and I heard two different views from the Cymru Premier clubs, if you like. That, hang on a minute, we're not happy with this because it's taken one of our European places away. I.e., they were expecting one of the bigger clubs to sort of win the cup and get the European place. But on the other hand, there were people, as who understand the bigger picture, if you like, that this will increase the profile of the clubs, and thus, even though it's a League Cup competition, it's the league ultimately, increase the profile and publicity that the league generates. And so that has to be a good thing in terms of potential footfall for them, in terms of a fan base, or for sponsorship deals for the future. So I saw a mixed reaction. I saw a mixed reaction from fans of the clubs as well, to be honest with you, Simon. I think,
Yes.
I think a lot of Swansea fans were in favour of it. I thought a lot of Wrexham and Cardiff fans weren't in favour of it, but I also knew Cardiff fans who were in favour of it. So there was sort of a mixed reaction from the clubs about the whole thing as well. I know the FAW's stance on this was they were really benefiting the big four. Let's call them the big four, if you like, of Cardiff, Swansea, Newport and Wrexham, in no particular order, right? That they were benefiting them by giving them a chance of European competition again for the first time in almost 30 years, and that they had no chance of ever doing that via the English system anymore. Yeah, but that's not, it was less than a decade ago that Swansea were marching, I think it was to the quarterfinals of the Euro, didn't they? They had a brilliant run under Michael Laudrup. They played Napoli and Valencia, and so that's after winning the League Cup. So that's 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 not so much in our lifetime. That's a recent live example. In 2008, when Peter Ridsdale, who ironically is on the FA board, and I'm told part of the, he wasn't. I'm told that he wasn't au fait with this argument. Only Peter can answer that for himself, I suppose. But when he was Cardiff chairman and Cardiff reached the 2008 FA Cup final against Portsmouth, he fought like mad to get a guarantee from the English power brokers that if Cardiff won, they would be able to play in Europe as a representative of the English system, if you like. And he got that guarantee as well. So there's two live examples of the not so distant past, Simon, that indicates this can happen. How can you just, and also, it's the wish of Cardiff, Swansea in particular, but also the Wrexham hierarchy. They're on record of saying it, Ryan Redders and Rob McElhenney. They want to be in the Premier League. What is football if you can't dream? You have to be able to have these dreams to be able, otherwise, what's the point of it, if you like, Now, going back to the publicity thing, I remember there was another strand to this, that in 2000, right in the early 2000s, 2001, 2, 3, whenever it was, Sam Hammam was chairman of Cardiff, and he mischievously or impishly or brilliantly, if you like, saw a route for Cardiff to get into the Champions League. And he saw that by entering a team into what was then the League of Wales, Simon. And he tried to do it, and he put a formal proposal together to the FAW that would get Cardiff into the League of Wales. Now, in effect, it would have been the Cardiff reserve team, but he saw an opportunity to win that league and get into the Champions League when the Cardiff first team would play, if you like. And it fell down because the first rule of the League of Wales, I think, was, certainly at the time, was you have to play your first team. You can't play your reserve team. To which Sam's argument was, well, change the damn rules then. I mean, he put it a bit more strongly than that, yeah, as you can imagine. But so I remember sitting with him in the foyer of a hotel when they were having this meeting, and he was quite nervous, Sam. He was waiting for the outcome. He saw a big advantage for Cardiff here. He put a very good, he was arguing that we have a squad, Paul, he said. So, for example, we can choose to play the players in whichever competition we opt to. And he mentioned Rob Earnshaw in particular. He said, if Ernie, who was on fire for Cardiff at the time, is injured and is coming back from injury, we will play him in the League of Wales team. And that will guarantee, because it's Ernie, that will guarantee that you and other people will come and cover that game. Cardiff fans will come and watch that game. That will will boost the profile of the team that we're playing. So say, for example, they were playing Cymru away or Haverfordwest or whoever it was at the time. His argument was that club could benefit from a bumper gate or something like that and gain great publicity. So this publicity argument has been floated in a different guise before, and it's right. It would happen, but making it happen is the complication, if you like.
Of course, yes. I would like to come to a couple of comments. I've got a couple of really interesting comments, and we'll get to them in just a second.
The home of Welsh sport. This is Cymru Sport.
So yeah, even in just in the comments and the feedback during the show now is very mixed. So Martin did ask the question: if it happened, would Cardiff, Wrexham, and Swansea, Newport, etc., would they still qualify for the European competitions if they were to win the FA Cup, or were they essentially going to sacrifice that opportunity? So if they won the FA Cup, they wouldn't then go into Europe, and they would have sacrificed it for the Welsh Cup opportunity. No,
they would have been out of qualifying by the English system for time immemorial. That was part of the agreement, that they would give up the right to qualify from that system. And just quickly on that, I know that there was a feeling, well, surely they would be better qualifying via the Welsh system than via the English system. But I think that's a misnomer, because say Cardiff were doing what Swansea were doing and playing Valencia away or Napoli away and that sort of thing, the place would be full of Welsh, as it would with Wrexham and Swansea and Newport. It would be full of Welsh flags in the home end. The Cardiff fans would be singing there, England botched it up in the Euros or the World Cup as usual. So, it's abundantly clear they would be, although they technically are qualifying via the English system, it's abundantly clear that they are a Welsh club nonetheless, which of course they all are.
Absolutely. John Watkins says that the FAW treated the clubs badly. I think he means, initially that story which you mentioned before. He said the only people the FAW want to benefit are the FAW. What they did had the same impact on me that the Red City shirts had on you, Si. So I think John is referring to the initial part of the story, way back when the clubs were kicked out of the Welsh system. That's quite a strong statement there from John. He's obviously was hurt by that initial, the initial exile, if you like, from the Welsh Cup back in the day. Was there at the time with that, Paul? Were those EFL clubs quite upset?
Yeah, of course they were, but there's two strands, or there's three strands to that. One is, did you say it was John who made that point?
Yes.
Yeah. He obviously can. I'm guessing he can remember that the Welsh Cup used to be a fabulous little competition, Simon.
Absolutely.
You know, just before being kicked out, Cardiff were involved in two finals at the Arms Park in the Eddie May era. There were big crowds there for those games, and Barry beat them in one of the games as well. I've always remembered that game, wondering, obviously there's a big Cardiff City following from Barry. Who were the Barry fans who wanted to win that cup that day? So it was a great, I remember a cracking little game between Cardiff and Wrexham in a semi-final at the old Ninian Park. These were wonderful occasions. They really were. I remember one day, Si, I remember one day going to cover Caerleon versus Cardiff in the FA Cup in an afternoon and going up to Tom Prenter and Newport County in the evening. Cracking atmospheres at both games, a classic sort of Litland versus Bigham Cup occasion. So it was a wonderful competition. And what it did was it created a rich Welsh history in European competition. It's I know we're going back to yesteryear, but Cardiff did beat Real Madrid, and it's relevant because it forms part of the Ale 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 song that Cardiff fans sing in the modern era. They did reach the semi-finals against Hamburg. I watched Wrexham winning some epic games, and even before I was involved, they were involved in some great battles against Anderlecht, I think it was. I remember going, you had Merthyr Tydfil beating Atlanta, who were a very decent Serie A team in Italy at the time. Bangor City back in the day beat Napoli. These are obviously before our time, but nonetheless, this is all part of the rich history. I remember going to the Vetchfield when Swansea City played Monaco, and Prince Albert, I think it was there sitting in the director's box at the Vetchfield. These were so I think that these are the points that he's making, that it was a rich history that was trashed at one go, but by sort of kicking them out of the competition, if you like. I think.
Sorry, Paul. Who made that decision to exile the EFL clubs from the Welsh Cup?
It was the FAW chief executive and the council. The council obviously had to make the final decision on it, but it was the FAW council who threw them out. Yeah. So
who was in charge of the FAW back then? Sorry, Paul.
Who was what? Sorry.
Who was in charge of who was the
the chief executive was Alan Evans, but ultimately, although he could guide, and Alan brought in the League of Wales, so that was a good thing. He's to be commended for that. But ultimately, the decisions have to be made by the FAW council, the 28-man council as it was then. And as I say, I remember writing this article saying what a ridiculous decision this was, and probably, I can't remember what I wrote in the article, probably making the very points I was just saying then. I feel as strongly about it almost 30 years on as I did then, that a rich history, a brilliant old competition was being ruined by this decision. Why? And as I say, straight away, I barely struggle to name a Welsh Cup final in the last 30 years, Simon, And obviously it's been a struggle, obviously it's been a hard struggle. The other big thing, which I should have mentioned here, it's been a real struggle for the Cymru Premier clubs in Europe. Yeah, there've been odd exceptions like TNS, brilliant recently. Yeah, I was there when TNS actually played Liverpool in the first game back in the Champions League after Liverpool had won in Istanbul. Wonderful occasion, They played Man City recently, have done really well getting through to the Europa group stage, if you like. But because they've struggled, the coefficient points, which has a knock-on effect in a whole raft of ways, not least finance coming into to Welsh football from UEFA, because they've struggled, our coefficient standing is down with the real lesser lights of European football, if you like, and that's not befitting a country of Wales's proud football heritage when you think of the players that we've produced, how good the national team has been, and that sort of thing. So again, the thought process was that these bigger clubs would be in Europe and they would do much better in Europe, and that would increase Wales's coefficient, which would bring more revenue in, which would increase greater interest. All of those things were part of the thought process, which is to be commended, I say again. But I felt that I just feel that football has moved on too much, and too much of a hornet's nest was being stirred up with this, in my opinion. Albeit I get the reasoning behind trying to do it.
Yeah, so I understand the reasoning, and I quite like, personally, just my personal opinion, which is obviously only mine. I quite like the idea of Cardiff being back in the Welsh Cup. You know, I sort of, like, I remember, I think I went to 1 or 2 Welsh Cup games, but, you know, I was a kid, you know, would have been going with my dad. But I look back on it really fondly. And like you just mentioned, in all the different occasions and games, and that Eddie May era, particular just before the exile, it's very fond memories, and it stirs something up in me, where I'm like, yeah, I would like to, you know, I'd like to revisit that a little bit. But as you say, football has moved on from a purely football point of view. Like, if we just take the sort of money side out of it, which I will ask you about in a minute, but the football side of it, I saw a lot of fans saying, oh, well, Cardiff and Swansea will just play their under 21s anyway, so it's not going to bring in the additional eyes and stuff like that. But I slightly disagree with that, because I think, for instance, now, if there was a Welsh Cup game coming up, you'd have Aaron Ramsey would probably play in his, you know, bid for fitness. Cardiff have got a lot of players coming back from injury, things like that. Same, I'm sure, at Swansea and at Wrexham. So you might see a bit of rotation in the early rounds, but you see that in the FA Cup anyway, and the League Cup. Teams rotate. Every team in the country rotates their teams in the Cup to give people playing time, to give people time to recover from injuries and things like that. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because you also get to see the best young players. And in a purely footballing sense, you know, some of the Welsh League sides might see some young players at Wrexham, Cardiff, Swansea, Newport, who maybe aren't getting first team opportunities, but they play a couple of Welsh League games and do well. They might be able to pick them up on loan, and, you know, a few might have slid under the radar. Do you think, from a purely football side of things, that could have been a benefit to both sides? Or do you think ultimately, it's, like you say, it was just too much of a hornet's nest?
Well, I think the Ramsey example you gave is a 2025 version of the Rob Earnshaw one I mentioned a moment ago. You know, I know there's a lot of cynicism, particularly, I know there's a lot of cynicism about Aaron Ramsey these days, including from some Cardiff fans, right? But the fact is that Craig Bellamy thinks the world of him, and Craig Bellamy will have him as Craig Bellamy's plan is to have him back as the captain of Wales. And so if the captain of Wales is playing making one of his comeback games in one of these, in a League Cup third round tie or quarter final tie, whatever it is, say away to Barry, or away to, you know, whoever it is, that does attract greater interest. It's bound to, you know, and that equivalent is that applies. It particularly applies to Cardiff and Swansea, because they're the bigger two clubs, if you like. But that principle applies right across the board, if you like. And although, you know, again, one of the ways football has changed is it's a greater squad game these days. For example, the Cardiff have got a very bloated squad right now, and so this sort of competition would be a chance to actually give game time to some of their first teamers, if you like, as well, who aren't in the first team at the moment, but might be in 2 months' time. You know, so I think, and certainly were it to come to a final, you'd have 2 first teams playing one another, I suspect, with a bumper crowd. Can you imagine Cardiff playing Swansea in the final of this with a place for Europe at stake? I mean, it would be a great occasion. So all the principle of what Noel Mooney wanted to bring in there, it is totally understandable. It would be greatly beneficial for Welsh football. But from day one, there's an even bigger picture for me, which is the danger of one day our Welsh clubs playing in the English system losing that privilege on the back of this, because of English clubs thinking, hang on, you can't just have your cake and eat it here. Something needs to give here. And I could have seen a fuss being kicked up. Well, it has been kicked up, hasn't it? Which is the reason that it's been thrown out at this stage. So
do you think that was a Sorry, I was going to
Go
say,
on.
do you think that would have been a real possibility that, Cardiff, Wrexham, Swansea, Newport, Merthyr as well, all within the English pyramid? Do you think there would have been a serious risk to it? Maybe not in the short term, but long term. If I suppose it only takes a year or two, and Cardiff have a little bit of a run in the Europa Conference, or Swansea or Wrexham, especially with the media attention that Wrexham get. You could imagine them, if they had like a little bit of a run in Europe, maybe some of the League One clubs or the Championship clubs, or within that EFL system, might not be happy because they don't get that opportunity. And yeah, I suppose I could see how it could be fast become a thing. Maybe not immediately, but a couple of years, you could definitely see it being an issue.
Well, I mean, use the word serious. I wouldn't quantify what the risk is, but I just think any element of risk is too much of a risk for this sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I do think the risk for that would be far greater. There's a lot of fuss kicked up about Team GB and the risk to Wales, an independent football nation. I've never seen that as a credible risk, because that is based on politics. That's based on African, German clubs around the world unhappy with an anachronistic, I've not said that right, have I? Situation whereby England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland sit with FIFA to make the rules of the game still, because they have done since the 1800s, yeah, and they feel that power is wrong, and that's why occasionally you get an issue raised about, Team GB, why should they have, that sort of thing. I think that this is far more of a clear and present threat, to be honest with you, Si, and I just think just let it go. Don't stir up the hornet's nest. But we'll have to see how it plays out from here on in. Norman is a very shrewd guy who's got a lot of really good creative ideas. That is to be commended. He is a force for good for Welsh football, and so that's not to be sniffed at. So it maybe they can come up with another way of doing it, or try to come up with another way of doing it. I don't know. I think it's probably unlikely, but you just never say never in football, do you?
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned earlier that you didn't think it was completely dead in the water. So I'm assuming that you think maybe that they'll try to find a way around it. But it does seem like, at this point at least, it seems as if there's nowhere to really go with it. But I guess, like you say, if you've got a bit of outside the box thinking, maybe they can come up with a way that satisfies everyone. The one thing I wanted to ask you, sort of, Paul, about it just very quickly is, what was the plan financially with it? Was the plan effectively that the EFL clubs wouldn't take any money from it, or was it that the majority of the money would just go back into Welsh football?
Well, I don't know the full ins and outs of that, but that it wouldn't be part of the financial fair play, if you like. So the profit they made from Europe would be taken away from that and go to Welsh football instead. But as I tried to hint at earlier, the complication with that is, let's use Cardiff as an example. Cardiff are flying or doing really well, and they're in Europe. There's a real chance then they can attract a much higher quality of player. So say they attract 5 really good players because they're doing well in the Championship, but they've also got European football, that sort of thing, which appeals to players who normally wouldn't get a chance of European football, if you like. How do you quantify that as not being as part of the balance sheet? So again, even that side of it is fraught with complications as well, I feel.
Yeah, of course. And hot on the heels of this actually being turned down by the EFL, am I right in saying that Merthyr were invited by the Welsh League to make the switch from the English pyramid to the Welsh pyramid? Or have I heard that wrong?
No, that's right. There was sort of like a £6 million package sort of floated in front of them, which would involve ground improvements and that sort of thing. So it's not you get £6 million, but Merthyr supporters who had the say on this have overwhelmingly turned it down. It was something like 96% of the vote, I think, said no, we want to stay where we are. So I'm a little bit more in two minds about that one, Simon, to be honest with you. But again, I can understand from Merthyr fans' point of view, there's a rich history there. You know, it's not really that long ago that they were fighting, you know, towards the conference and that sort of, what is the conference now? So their fans, again, I come back to what I said earlier. What is football without dreams? Their fans dream of going up that pyramid system and playing your Forest Green Rovers or your Darlingtons or whoever on a regular basis, if you like. Why should that dream be taken away? I suppose the counter argument to that is come into our league, and although the matches are less grandiose potentially every week, you know, you've got a real chance of doing what TNS did if you get it right, and playing Fiorentina, which TNS did this year, or I've watched TNS play Liverpool. I've told you, when only 5 Steven Gerrard goals, doesn't say, you know, sounds a lot now, but it was only Steven Gerrard goals that beat them. I've seen them play Manchester City at the Millennium Stadium. Kevin Keegan was in charge of Man City at the time. So, you know, we'll have those games, Merthyr, rather than an FA Cup game against, I don't know, Tiverton or whatever. Yeah, I suppose that would be the counter argument there.
Yeah, and I do understand it. And I'm a big believer in history with football clubs. And I think that should count for something. I think that's important. But I also could understand, you know, I could see both the benefits to both sides of it. Obviously, Merthyr fans voted, you know, very strongly with it. Paul, to kind of finish us off, I take you in a little bit of a different direction. I wanted to kind of ask you a couple of questions, just generally, really. I know you enjoy talking about Craig Bellamy as Welsh manager. So I wanted to ask you if you think that maybe we see some of the young Welsh guys getting some caps. Particularly, I look at Biancheri. He's doing quite well for Manchester United's under 18s and 21s. Do you think we might end up getting him capped due to the fact that he could potentially play for Italy as well?
I'm not sure Craig will be that perturbed about the need to do that, to be honest with you. In terms of, he's a great believer. I mean, we can see Craig Bellamy's ethos with Wales is legs, energy, running, pressing, high pressing. And, you know, he made it clear that's the way he wanted to play. I remember him saying that he'd seen before, just as he got the job, he pored over all the statistics from the Premier League and the Championship, and he was adamant that his Wales team could play the way he wanted to do because we run more in this country, we press higher, that sort of thing. He'd seen the statistics that back this up, but obviously he needs a certain sort of player to play that way as well. And naturally, younger players have those legs and energy and the athleticism that he wants. So clearly they'll continue to be brought through. He knows the system inside out. You know, I know that the FA were bowled over when he went for the interview about how much he knew about players deep in the background who had Welsh qualifications and who were coming through. He was sort of fully aware of all of them. So his knowledge of it all is immense. He certainly won't be averse to capping younger players, but we've got, you know, we've got big World Cup qualifiers coming up, Simon, and that will be a role for the experienced players, I think. I think he'd like to go that way. In terms of Biancheri, as you mentioned him, I don't know too much about him other than I'm told by somebody with authority here who's told me this, that his numbers are freakish. We're talking about Michael Owen, Ian Rush goal numbers at youth level. So if that is the case, crikey, I hope that he is captain a competitive game sooner rather than later. Craig's not going to pick him if he's not ready, though, just to ward off the threat of Italy. I don't think that'd be Bellamy's style.
No, and I think, I mean, in fairness, I believe he wears the Wales flag on his boots. So I think, you know, hopefully long term that'll be where his future is. But I know Italy are keeping tabs on him. I was talking to someone up in Manchester about it the other day. But the other side of that, do you think Keaton Ashford makes the next Wales squad?
Well, he perfectly suits. Number one, Craig coached him at Cardiff, obviously. When he, not Ruben Colwell, I was always being taught, nobody even mentioned Ruben Colwell to me. And you know what I think of Ruben. He's a wonderful talent. But Cian Ashford was always the one that I was being told about. He's the next bright thing to come through. He's the one. He's the one. Craig would have been aware of this, coaching him. We've seen with Cardiff of late, he has got those legs and energy and the pace and the athleticism and the dynamism and the direct running that Craig wants from his players. So he suits that perfectly. I'd be surprised if he's not in the next Welsh squad.
Yes, and I think he deserves it for his performances, Paul. I think his form has been excellent this year. He's a young player, so you'd expect a bit of up and down. But I think generally speaking, his performance has been excellent, and also, like you say, his skill set is very much suited to the way that Craig Bellamy wants to play football for Wales. Paul, lastly, before I let you go, were you a bit surprised that Swansea let their captain go in the January window and haven't sort of really replaced him? There was talk of also Harry Darling going. I think he stayed in the end. It seems. We had Jack Ward on earlier, who does an EFL podcast, and he said that there was a bit of chaos behind the scenes at Swansea with regards to the transfer window, and the fans are not happy.
Well, it's not been a great transfer window for them, has it? We can see that. The idea of I know that the stance of the chairman is you judge a transfer window by whether you come out of it with a better squad stroke than you had going into it. I don't think anybody in their right minds can claim that that's the case at Swansea at the moment after this window. In terms of the captain, he's a tidy player, Grimes, but he's approaching 30 now. I can understand him wanting one last sort of payday, if you like. And sometimes you get stale, Simon. He's been at Swansea, he seems to have been at Swansea as long as Joe Ralls has been at Cardiff. And Grimes, I can understand it if he wants a new challenge now, if you like. I think he's been a very, very tidy player for them. Lovely skill set. I used to watch derby matches when I thought he and Jay Fulton looked like Xavi and Iniesta. So appalling was the Cardiff midfield in some of those derby games of the not so distant past. That dynamic changed last year with Ramsey and Siopis sort of running the game at CCS, and obviously it changed this year with Chambers, Robertson, and Joe Ralls. It was actually who had a good derby game this year. So it sort of changed. That dynamic changed this year. But he's a very tidy player. He'll do a decent job for Coventry. They've got a go-ahead young management team in Mark Robbins and James Rhodri, who will, get the best out of him. So it's a loss to Swansea, but time stands still for nobody in football, Simon. And, am I surprised that he's gone? I thought he might have gone a year ago, to be honest with you. I was surprised that, I thought there was some talk that he'd join Russell Martin at Southampton. I think it'd be nice to see him have a crack at the Premier League. Whether he'd been good enough for that standard, is open to question. But, he's a very tidy Championship midfielder with a good skill set, a good range of passing, and he'll do well at Coventry.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because they've, like you said, he's getting towards 30. They've moved him on. Ollie Cooper, I noticed, is back from his injury as well. So they do have a couple of decent young midfielders as well. And maybe that's the way that they're looking to go. We've talked about many times this season in the Championship. You look at the teams at the top in League One, you look at the teams at the top. A lot of them are going with those younger players. That profile of player is sort of 20 to 23, 24, athletic, technically good. And maybe Swansea are preparing more for next season. I'm not sure. But equally, on the back of some poor form coming into, this last few weeks, they don't want to get dragged into that relegation battle. And I think they're only just above it, aren't they? So they can't afford for any negativity from the window or perceived negativity from the window to sort of drag their form further down as well.
Ollie Cooper's a very different player to Matt Grimes. Ollie Cooper's a 10 or an attacking player. Grimes, I always thought, was a really good box-to-box 8, who in more recent times, because his legs are not as, it happens with age, has sat far deeper in more recent times, if you like, albeit he's been able to pervade the ball, similar to the way Leon Britton used to do for them when he was playing in that deeper role. They are in a bit of free fall, Swansea. It's not just they're losing; they're losing heavily. They're losing heavily in matches, but it's not. Compared to Swansea, have had some super teams in this century, Simon. Really good players there, and I always felt this is not one of them. It hasn't been from the start of the season. You could make an argument for the starting 11, but there's certainly no very little in terms of backup there, if you like. And I feel that I always felt they would do well to avoid to get above the bottom 6 this season, the bottom 8, if you like. And they did really well earlier this year. They surprised me with some of the results, some of the wins they were getting. So they'll be fine because they've achieved those wins, perhaps one or two of them unexpected earlier in the season. They'll be fine, but I do think it'll be a battle for them near the lower end now rather than the top end, which some of the fans were sort of looking rather optimistically towards amid sort of decent results earlier in the season, if you like. And I do think you get to the stage now where, not so much at the moment, but certainly when we kick in with March and April, or injuries, fatigue and suspensions kick in and bite, I think that's when Swansea City's lack of squad depth will sort of affect them. So again, you'd have to question some of the transfer dealings at that point as well. So, you don't want it having a knock-on effect in terms of creating that negativity if you're a Swansea fan, but it's hard, it's hard to think that you come out of this window with a better squad than you had going into it, if you like. As I say, it's worth sort of reiterating that point, I suppose. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, they've lost 5 of the last 6. They haven't won a game in 6 in the league. So they're definitely in danger of being pulled in. I think they'll be keen to put a stop to that.
They'll be fine. They've got enough points in the bag already. Yeah. Not enough. If they lose every game, it's a different matter entirely. Well, they've got enough points. They've got enough points in the bag, I feel, to get 4 or 5 wins they need to avoid being in real danger. But what happens next season then might be a different kettle of fish. They will certainly need some substantial strengthening during the summer window to bolster the squad, and particularly to bolster the squad depth as well.
100%, Paul. Paul, thank you so much for joining me and giving us the deep dive on the Welsh Cup situation. Really appreciate your time as always. And next up, we'll be finishing up looking ahead to Merthyr versus Plymouth.
If you're hearing this, so are your potential customers. Be heard and reach sports fans across the country. We have advertising opportunities available throughout our programmes, website and commentaries. Working with you, we will create a bespoke package and make sure your message reaches the people you want to hear it. Contact us today to find out how Cymru Sport could help your business. Email contact@cymrusport.cymru.
Welcome back. I'm Si. This is the Welsh Football Hour on Cymru Sport and Cardiff City World, and I'm delighted to be joined by one of Cymru Sport's commentators, Geraint. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, fine, thanks. How's it? It sounds good. I was fascinating listening to Paul. I've read a lot of his work, so it's good to actually hear him for the first time.
Yeah, no, he's a good speaker, and he knows that subject inside and out, due to his contacts within the Welsh FA and the English FA and football generally. So I thought it was an interesting show to give him a bit of extra time and have a bit of a deep dive onto the Welsh Cup situation, because I can certainly see it from both points of view and both sides, and it's kind of fascinating to look.
Now, my take on it is I haven't had enough information to make a decision. I remember I go back when I was a kid, when I was in primary school, Aberystwyth knocked Hereford out of the cup the week after Hereford beat Newcastle in the FA Cup. David Icke was in goal for them as well, as he once told me when he came into the into where I was working. A long story. They drew Wrexham, and Aberystwyth hired a train, and we all went up to Wrexham for a Tuesday evening, Wednesday evening. We lost 6-2. Interesting that Eddie May was the central defender that I hated at the time because he chopped somebody really rotten, but then he did his job. But yes, I do miss games like that, but I haven't had enough figures, projected figures. People talk about ratings and coefficients and stuff, but nobody says this is how much you've got to get up, and if you go up a coefficient, this is how much it's going to be for the clubs, not just Cardiff or Wrexham. So that was my take anyway.
Yeah, of course. And I think ultimately that's what the Welsh League clubs need to know, isn't it? Is that, and I'm sure it's been communicated to them in some form, but is you need to know how much is going to benefit you as a football club and as a league and things like that. On the Merthyr side of things, Merthyr have an FA Cup game this weekend. Are you looking forward to it?
I'm looking forward to it. They have a Southern League.
Sorry,
it's a Southern League Premier game. Yeah. They're playing Plymouth Parkway.
That's right.
Plymouth are a very, very young club in terms. They're 1988 they were formed, and so hats off to them for reaching this level in the English pyramid. But it should be one that Merthyr win. But Merthyr went to bottom club Marlow last Saturday and scraped a 1-0 win in the last minute. On Tuesday, they faced Basingstoke, went 1-0 down in the first half, and it was debutant loanee from Newport, Cuban Ray, who actually got the equaliser in the 91st minute. So they're having a bit of a wobble. Still getting the great crowds for that level. They're still getting 1,200 for Tuesday. I think it was 1,700 the time before, and they were playing at home. So, it's and it's still, I think, match day experience is great there. So I'm hoping that they will come away with the points. They need to, because although they do have an 8-point lead over Tottenham in this league, Tottenham have 2 games in hand, and they are playing Tottenham away on the 1st of March. So they really need to get it together, basically.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because obviously they began the season so well, Merthyr, and they are sitting pretty at the top of the league. But like you say, Tottenham, they've got those couple of games in hand. And when a team in second is only, 8 points behind, and they've got those games in hand, it's not a good time to have a wobble. So I'm sure they'll be looking to put things right on Saturday.
Yeah, momentum's with Tottenham, to be perfectly honest. It's like one of my colleagues, Harry Ware, has always said 2-0, being 2-0 up is the most dangerous position to be in, because you take your foot off the accelerator, maybe the opposition get a goal back, and before you know it, you're trying to regain that intensity, and they're on the winning straight, and you get overturned. So it's a similar thing, I think, in that situation. Yeah, 8 points looks great, but Tottenham, they drew last Saturday, but they could possibly, they 2 games in hand. Who knows? We've got another game. Go on. Sorry, you carry on.
Just to ask you about the Merthyr Plymouth Parkway game. What are the standout players for, or what sort of, is there a player from each team that you could give us to kind of look out for in terms of the standout players for each team?
I must admit, you ask me that next week and I'll research the away team.
No problem.
I don't know any of the Plymouth Parkway team at all, I'm afraid, but I could say that the standout, the talisman for Merthyr is Ricardo Rhys. He is a goal poacher. He's a really good player that's come in, and he sneaks the goals. See, he's the one that they certainly the crowd buzz when he gets the ball. But the team themselves, they've got some very able players in there. Carl Jarvis was playing Tier 3 for Newport City in Wales last season, and he
Oh, okay.
fits in the first team squad now. So,
Wow.
there's a lot of good ones there. But yes, I'll be looking forward to that. I'm actually, it's going to be Matt who's going to be commentating for us on that game. I'm going to another exciting one up north because last Friday I did the first versus second in the Cymru South. And as it happens, it's first versus second in the Cymru North this weekend. So I'm off to Airbus on Saturday to see Airbus take on Colwyn Bay. So that should be a well-supported game as well, and a very close one. There's 1 point separating the two of those teams. There's about 10 games left, so it's that time of the year.
Yeah, it'd be very tense, that one, by the sounds of it. There's only 10 games left and 1 point between them. There's going to be a tense one. What sort of crowd will they get down there?
It really does depend on how many Colwyn Bay turn up. I mean, Airbus play in a place called Broughton, which is just outside of Chester on this side of the border. So it's not too far away. And Colwyn Bay at home will get anything, but it's normally around the 1,000-1,500 range. Airbus don't get so many, although the Airbus community, we went there earlier in the season when they played Bangor, and they're getting a decent crowd of a few hundred going through. But Airbus, the concept of Airbus Football Club is that they are paid for in some part, I believe, and somebody from Airbus can correct me if I'm wrong, but they are paid for by the social sports club subscriptions by the Airbus employees. So that is a source of income for them. So it's a really strange situation. It's also the only ground I've ever been that is slap bang next to a runway. And although they don't fly belugas anymore on a weekend, apparently that was something that literally stopped the game when the jets used to take off with the wing parts to go to other factories. So it's an interesting experience going to Airbus. It's a lovely ground. They do make you welcome. Colwyn Bay, I reckon, have got a good set of fans, very vocal as well. I think this is one thing. Perhaps it's an offbeat thing. Perhaps to talk on the future. Welsh games can be very quiet. Colwyn Bay have got experience of being in National League North, so they are more vocal. So maybe we could discuss that another time.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be very interested actually to hear that. And I'm hoping to get some Cymru League owners on if I can. I'm making inquiries because what I would like to do is maybe spend 10 to 15 minutes a week on this Welsh Football Hour, just telling the story of some of these clubs, and so people can get a real feel for it and get introduced to it. And I think that's a good way is also to make people who don't follow the Welsh League as much, they can make them more aware of some of the teams and some of the players that are coming through there. Because I'll
ask the question. I'll ask the question this weekend, and also compare notes, because I probably have some contacts that you'd be interested in that sense, that to talk through. And every club has a very interesting story, I reckon, and it's useful to paint the picture, basically.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So, Geraint, I'm assuming you're looking forward to the weekend. Is there any other big games coming up on Cymru Sport?
Well, the weekend after, I mean, saying there's the two games this weekend. The weekend after, it is a lowly relegation battle in the Cymru North, but it's of significance because it is two of the former mining communities in the Wrexham area. Fly Miners Welfare are taking on Grassford Athletic, and that has huge historical significance, because the coal mining belt in Wrexham was quite compact, but the mines did produce a lot of coal, so they had a lot of employees. So that's the first time they've managed to do this in 4 or 5 years, I think. So there's a bit of history in that one coming up. There's a few on the radar. I put up on the website as soon as I have confirmation all the games that we're doing. In the 22nd, I'm looking forward to the FA Trophy, which is for tier 3 and below, to reach the quarterfinal stage, and I'll be going to one of those. And of course the Welsh Cup, which is on the 15th as well, which is in the quarterfinal stage. I'd love Denby Llanelli. I'd love to see that, but unfortunately, I will be elsewhere. But yeah, there's a lot to see.
Absolutely, some big games within Welsh football coming up over the coming weeks. We will be back next Wednesday with an all new episode of Cardiff City World and an all new episode of the Welsh Football Hour live on Cymru Sport. So please do join us. A big thanks to all our guests this evening, including former Cardiff City defender, Dutchman Glenn Loovens, as well as Jamie, and of course, journalist and author Paula Bandonato, and last but not least, of course, Geraint, for filling us in on the Welsh League. Please do join us. Spread the word on social media. Cymru Sport on social media as well. Give them a follow and let them know that you're listening, watching, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Cardiff City World on Cymru Sports.
If you love sport, always have an opinion, why not share it with our audience? We are always looking for new volunteers to join our team, from commentating or producing to writing or interviewing. There are so many ways that you can get involved. Get access to sport across the country, develop your skills and be part of the Welsh sporting community. To find out more, visit our website